君の中にある赤と青き線もそれらが結ばれるのは真の像
66 million years ago, the Earth trembled under the weight of a legend. In the shadows of the prehistoric wild, a predator moved that commanded absolute fear. This was the Tyrannosaurus rex, the undisputed ruler of a world ruled by strength. Every inch of its massive body was refined for the hunt. Its eyes were sharp and calculated. Its jaws held 60 serrated teeth, each the size of a dagger, capable of tearing through anything. Propelled by massive hind legs, this 9-ton titan could chase down prey with terrifying speed. But its greatest weapon was its bite delivering over 12,000 pounds of bone-crushing pressure. Today, its target is a formidable Triceratops, a 3-horned warrior ready to defend its life. The king circles, waiting for the perfect moment to unleash its devastating power. In a blur of scale and muscle, the apex killer strikes. There is no escape from the king. Though its reign ended eons ago, no creature has ever matched its terrifying majesty. The Tyrannosaurus rex, forever the king of the killers.
You know, there are some names in history that just command respect. But then there are names that inspire pure, absolute awe. And right at the top of that list has to be Tyrannosaurus rex. We've all heard the name, we've all seen the movies, but what really made this dinosaur the undisputed icon of the prehistoric world?
I mean, it's right there in the name, isn't it? Not just a lizard, not just a king, but a tyrant lizard king. Now that is a name that promises some serious, unparalleled power.
So that's what we're going to dive into today. We're going to break down the raw statistics, unpack its incredible physical arsenal, and reveal the hidden sensory advantages that made T-Rex the ultimate carnivore. All right, first things first, let's just try to get a sense of the sheer scale of this animal. The numbers alone are, well, they're staggering. So T-Rex was walking the Earth right at the very end of the age of dinosaurs. Its 2-million-year reign was like the grand finale, the final act right before that massive asteroid came and changed the world forever. It was one of the last, and for sure one of the greatest of its kind. Let's start with just how long it was. From its snout to the tip of its tail, a fully grown T-Rex could measure up to 40 feet. That's longer than a school bus. Just try to imagine a predator that huge moving through the ancient forests.
But you know, length is only one part of the story. The real key to its dominance was its sheer mass. This creature could weigh up to 14 tons. And to really wrap your head around what that means, you need to see it next to something we know today.
Okay, just look at this. The largest land animal alive today, the African elephant. It's a giant, right? Well, a T-Rex could be double that weight. Seriously, picture a predator with the mass of 2 bull elephants charging at you. That's a whole different level of power. And what's wild is how fast it got that big. From studying its bones, we think T-Rex lived for about 30 years, but it packed on most of that unbelievable bulk during this ferocious teenage growth spurt. In a world full of giants, getting huge and getting huge fast wasn't just an advantage, it was absolutely essential to survive.
So we've established it was just enormous. But how is all that mass weaponized? Well, let's take a look at the anatomy of what was basically a perfect killing machine.
We're going to examine 4 key parts of its arsenal: the skull itself, the devastating jaws it powered, those surprisingly strong arms, and the very posture that made it such a dynamic hunter. The skull alone was 5 feet long, a weapon in and of itself. But it was also a marvel of engineering. It was filled with these large openings, called fenestrae, that made it way lighter without sacrificing any of its incredible strength. It was just built for maximum impact. And the power that skull could generate, it's almost unbelievable. We're talking about a bite force of up to 57,000 newtons.
So what does that number actually mean? It means this was the strongest bite force of any land animal that has ever lived. Its teeth weren't like knives for slicing. No, they were more like railroad spikes, designed for one single purpose: to shatter the bones of its prey. And in a world with armored dinosaurs like Triceratops, being able to just pulverize their defenses was the ultimate game changer.
And this brings us to one of the biggest myths about T-Rex. Everyone jokes about its tiny arms, right? Well, the reality is they were over 3 feet long, incredibly muscular, and totally capable of grasping struggling prey or helping this massive animal get up. Useless? Not a chance.
And you can forget those old movie depictions of it standing upright like Godzilla. T-Rex actually held its body horizontally, almost parallel to the ground. Its massive tail wasn't just dragging behind it, it was held up high, acting as a perfect counterbalance to that enormous head. This was the posture of a powerful, active predator.
But sheer power wasn't its only weapon. The T-Rex's real secret, the thing that elevated it from just a brute to a sophisticated super predator, was its incredible sensory system. Let's start with smell. The parts of its brain that are dedicated to scent, the olfactory bulbs, were huge. This tells us it probably had a sense of smell on par with a modern vulture, meaning it could detect prey or carcasses from miles and miles away. Then there's its vision. Unlike a lot of other big dinosaurs, T-Rex's eyes faced forward. This gave it excellent binocular vision, just like we have, and just like modern predators. For a hunter, this is absolutely critical, because it provides depth perception, the ability to judge distance to a target perfectly. And the quality of that vision? Well, research suggests its visual sharpness was likely even better than that of a modern hawk. It could spot prey with breathtaking clarity from enormous distances. And finally, hearing. The structure of its inner ear tells us it was specialized for picking up low-frequency sounds. This means it could hear the distant, deep rumbles of other large animals moving around long before they had any idea it was there. So when you put all of that together, the incredible size, the bone-crushing power, and these hyper-tuned senses, you get an animal that truly, truly lived up to its name. I mean, just think about that combination for a second. The bone-crushing power of a 14-ton body, but guided by vision sharper than a hawk's, a sense of smell that could rival a vulture, and hearing tuned to the very footsteps of its prey. It wasn't just big, it was a sophisticated, sensory-driven hunter, the ultimate predator, and a true tyrant king.
You know, when you picture a Tyrannosaurus Rex, you probably think of that giant, roaring monster from the movies. But what was this creature actually like? Well, let's dive in and really separate the Hollywood fiction from the incredible scientific fact. All right, so let's start with the big one, right? The oldest, most famous question of them all. Was the mighty T-Rex this terrifying active hunter that chased down its prey? Or was it more of a giant, lazy scavenger, just cleaning up carcasses others left behind? For the longest time, this debate was fierce. I mean, scientists were really split on it. But over the years, the fossil clues have started telling a very clear story. So let's follow the evidence. Okay, so check this out, because every one of these points is like a clue in a detective story. First off, we've found fossils of animals like Triceratops with T-Rex bite marks that actually healed over. That's the smoking gun, right there. It proves T-Rex was attacking live animals. Then you look at its eyes. They faced forward, giving it binocular vision, excellent depth perception for hunting, not something a scavenger would need. Throw in those powerful legs, clearly built for a chase, and an absolutely incredible sense of smell to track prey, and the picture of a hunter gets pretty hard to argue with. So what's the final verdict? Well, it turns out it wasn't a simple either-or situation. The science now tells us that T-Rex was a bit of both. It was absolutely an active hunter, but, you know, just like a lion or a hyena today, it was never going to turn down a free meal if it stumbled upon one. It was a pragmatist. And hey, if you want the most direct proof of its eating habits, well, we gotta talk about its poop. Yep, fossilized dung, or coprolites. And inside these things, scientists have found tons of crushed up bone fragments. This tells us its bite was so unbelievably powerful that it could literally shatter the bones of its prey to get to the marrow, not just nibbling the meat. So there you have it. To settle the great debate once and for all, T-Rex was a hunter and a scavenger. It was the dominant, opportunistic, apex predator at the absolute top of its food chain. Okay, so we know how it acted. We know it was a killer. But that just opens up another can of worms, doesn't it? One that has completely flipped our image of this dinosaur on its head. What did this thing actually look like? And I'll tell you right now, you can forget that green, scaly monster from the old movies. The reality is way weirder and honestly a lot more interesting. So what's the biggest shocker about its appearance? I'll give you a hint. It isn't the scales. We're talking about feathers. The discovery of T-Rex's feathered relatives changed absolutely everything. But it seems the answer to the whole feathers or scales thing really depends on how old the T-Rex was. So try to picture this. A young, juvenile T-Rex was probably covered in a coat of fuzzy, downy feathers, kind of like a giant, terrifying chick, maybe for warmth or for camouflage. But as it got older and ballooned into this multi-ton giant, it ran into a big problem: overheating. A massive animal generates a ton of body heat, so adult T-Rexes likely shed most of those feathers, becoming primarily scaly just to stay cool. So fuzzy babies, scaly giants, a tale of two ages. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Healed bite marks, fossilized poop, feathered babies. How in the world can we possibly know these details about an animal that died out 66 million years ago? Where is all this information actually coming from? Well, the answer comes down to a handful of very special fossils. Our entire understanding of this species, pretty much everything we've talked about, is built on the skeletons of a few world-famous named individuals. These are the rock stars of the fossil record. And look, when I say a handful, I am not kidding. We found fewer than 50 individual T-Rex specimens in the entire world. That's it. So that makes every single bone, every skeleton, an absolutely priceless scientific treasure. And within that tiny group, you've got the real A-listers, the celebrities. There's Sue, who you can see at the Field Museum. She's the most complete T-Rex ever found, about 90% intact. Then there's Scotty, the certified biggest and heaviest T-Rex we have on record. And of course, Stan, one of the most studied skeletons out there, who's told us so much about their injuries and how they lived. And just to give you a sense of scale with Scotty, we estimate he weighed over 8,800 kilograms. That is heavier than a large African elephant. We are talking about a truly massive animal. Now here's where the story takes a kind of a wild turn. Because these fossils are so incredibly rare and so important to science, they've also become unbelievably valuable on the open market. They've gone from being scientific treasures to multi-million-dollar assets. Back in 1997, people's jaws just dropped when Sue sold at auction for $8.3 million. At the time, that was just an unbelievable amount of money, but it meant that the fossil could be bought by a museum and kept for public display and study. But, get ready for this, that record was absolutely shattered to pieces in 2020. The fossil Stan sold for a mind-blowing $31.8 million. That makes it the most expensive fossil ever sold at auction. Period. It just goes to show how precious these windows into the past really are. So when you put all this together, the hunting, the scavenging, the feathers, the crazy auction prices, what's the big takeaway here? It's that T-Rex wasn't a one-dimensional movie monster. It was a complex, living, breathing animal that we're only just beginning to truly understand, all thanks to a few precious skeletons. And that's what's so exciting about paleontology, right? Each new discovery, each new bone, has the potential to completely rewrite what we think we know. Which leaves us with one final thrilling question. What new secrets is the next T-Rex fossil going to reveal?
Tyrannosaurus rex.
The tyrant lizard king. I mean, it's the one dinosaur everybody knows, right? It's this absolute icon of a lost world, stomping through our movies and our imaginations. We feel like we know it inside and out. But what if the legend we've all come to know is, well, a little out of date?
Okay, let's just dive right in with a question that, I know, sounds a little crazy. Take a good look at what might be the most terrifying predator to ever walk the earth. Now, think about a chicken. Seriously, is there a connection? The answer might just change how you see, well, pretty much everything. So to get to the bottom of that whole chicken thing, we need to take a look at the T-Rex's family tree. And let me tell you, it is packed with some major surprises.
Now here's a word for you. Coeurosauria. It sounds super scientific, but it's just the official name for the big group, or clade, that T-Rex belongs to. This is a branch of the theropods. You know, the two-legged, mostly meat-eating dinosaurs. But here's the kicker. Look what else is in that exact same group. Yep, modern birds. They are on the same major branch of the tree of life.
And this really breaks it down, doesn't it? On the left, you've got T-Rex, an extinct theropod. And on the right, a chicken, a living, breathing, clucking descendant of theropod dinosaurs. So the answer to our first question is a massive, resounding yes. Birds aren't just related to dinosaurs. Paleontologists actually consider them to be living dinosaurs. T-Rex is a distant cousin to your breakfast eggs. Wild, right?
And T-Rex wasn't flying solo. It had some really close and just as scary relatives roaming other parts of the world. Over in Asia, you had the huge Tarbosaurus. In what's now China, there was Zhucheng Tyrannus. And even closer to home, right up in Canada, you had the Albertorosaurus. This wasn't just one king, it was a global dynasty of apex predators.
So, if the Tyrannosaurs were so successful, ruling the whole planet, where did they all go? Well, their reign, and the reign of so many other incredible creatures, came to a sudden and unbelievably catastrophic end.
So, 66 million years ago, an asteroid the size of a mountain came screaming out of space and slammed into the planet. The immediate blast was unimaginable. It triggered earthquakes, tsunamis, and firestorms that literally baked continents. But the long-term effects were even worse. All that dust and soot got thrown up into the atmosphere, blocking out the sun for years. This created a deadly impact winter, where plants couldn't grow and the entire global food chain just collapsed. And this number, this single staggering number, really drives home just how bad it was. In one single event, 75% of all life on Earth was just gone, wiped out. All the non-avian dinosaurs, including our T-Rex and its giant cousins, vanished for good. It was a complete and total reset for life on this planet.
But the story doesn't stop at extinction. Because even though T-Rex is gone, our understanding of it is more alive than ever. You see, the science of paleontology is constantly moving, and it's forcing us to completely reimagine this legendary creature.
All right, let's start with its face. We all have that classic picture in our heads, don't we? That monstrous, toothy grin that looks like it's straight out of a horror movie. But was it actually accurate? Well, probably not. The old view, the one we see in all the movies, shows T-Rex with its teeth hanging out all the time, kind of like a crocodile. But brand new research suggests that's all wrong. By looking at the texture of its jawbones and the wear and tear on its teeth, scientists now think it had lips, more like a modern Komodo dragon, which would have covered its teeth when its mouth was shut. It's a small tweak, but it makes it look so much more like a real animal and less like a movie monster. Okay, so we've given it a bit of a facelift, but what about how it moved? We tend to picture this heavy, stomping beast that makes the ground shake with every single step. Well, the science on that has evolved too. Instead of just a heavy, plodding walk, new computer models suggest that when it was just cruising around, T-Rex probably used a more efficient trot.
This kind of gait would have helped it save a massive amount of energy while covering long distances, something that's absolutely vital for a predator of that size. So you're probably wondering, how are we learning all this new stuff so long after they disappeared? Well, the future of discovery is getting smaller, way smaller. Scientists can now actually analyze proteins and other microscopic bits preserved deep inside fossilized bones, and it's revealing secrets about dinosaur biology we never ever thought we'd know. And this really brings us to the biggest takeaway here. This quote just sums it up perfectly. Our knowledge isn't frozen in time. It's a living, breathing thing. The T-Rex you learned about today is different from the one your parents learned about, and it's almost certainly going to be different for the next generation.
So, the next time you see a T-Rex skeleton, or even just a pigeon on the sidewalk, remember its story is still being written, one fossil, one protein, one brilliant new idea at a time. And that just leaves one big question. What incredible secret are the bones going to reveal to us next?